Welcome back to QG Connect, everyone. So this is a series of interviews where we interview industry leaders on their perspectives around data governance and talk about the phase of the journey that their organization's on when it comes to governance and the broader arena of data management. So we have a great interview lined up for you today. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Lucia Arando, data management lead at NaranjaX. So welcome, Lucia.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks to DataQG for the invitation and the opportunity to share some data governance real-life experiences.
Absolutely. Glad to have you here and really excited to talk to you today. And I'd just like to sort of give our listeners a very brief introduction to you, Lucia, if you don't mind. So Lucia is from Argentina, and she's a software engineer. And after 10 years of experience in the software development engineering space across different industries, so she decided to step out of her comfort zone and immerse herself in the evolving field of data governance. And currently, she leads the data management team at NaranjaX, innovating a data leadership framework to get the most out of the data assets and democratize data across their whole enterprise. So welcome again, Lucia.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you. Just if you allow me a couple of minutes, I would love to share with you and the audience some information about Argentina, that is the country where I'm speaking from right now. Argentina is in the southern region of the American continent. We are the largest speaking Spanish nation in the world by area, with a population of 45 million people. Over 60% of the population has full or partial Italian ancestry. So Argentine culture has a lot of connections with Italian culture. Also, we are well known by our beef, wines, and tango. That is one of the most sophisticated dances, in my opinion, at least. And of course, you may have heard about Messi and Maradona as well. Buenos Aires, that is the country's capital, is the largest city. And the second one is Córdoba, the place where I live and where the company I work for was founded. Córdoba is in the exact center of Argentina. It's full of history and culture. It's modern and traditional. Where else will you find DJ spinning electro tango in a crowded students' bar next to a 17th century Jesuit ruins, right? But what I love the most of Córdoba, it's definitely the balance between nature and urbanism. You know that you can be at a very small little mountain villages at a very short bus ride away. Just to give you some context.
No, this is great, Lucia. And to be honest, I'd love to spend the next 20 minutes or whatever just talking about Argentina and the best places to visit, because I really love to travel, and South America and Argentina sounds like a great place. I'd love to visit someplace.
Yes, you're welcome.
I was wondering, Lucia, could you maybe tell us a little bit about what NaranjaX does?
Yes, sure. NaranjaX, as I mentioned, was founded in Córdoba 35 years ago. It started with two entrepreneurs selling apparel, accessories, and sports equipment until they consolidate as a leader brand in the sports industry. And after a continuous transformation, disruption, and an exponential vision, they reinvented themselves to convert the #1 credit card in Argentina. NaranjaX today is a company that provides financial services to enhance the use of the money of our clients. We provide services for money management, basically, just like accounts, prepaid cards, credit cards, payments of services, etc. So we are working to revolutionize the fintech world with a very customer-centric approach. NaranjaX app has already thousands of active accounts, but however, the company intends to scale up this experience up to more than 5 million people that already use some service or product from our ecosystem.
Thanks for that, Lucia. Yeah, I know FinServe, especially in North America, that's a field that's rapidly evolving due to the use of new technology stacks, and I think even around data governance. So it's really sort of, I'm looking forward to kind of understanding how data governance plays a role at NaranjaX. But before we get there, I was wondering if you could maybe let our listeners know a little bit about yourself, maybe outside of work, what do you like to do in your off time?
Okay. Okay, so I'm 37 years old. I'm married. I have two beautiful daughters, Juan and Catalina. You can see pictures of them in the back. And although I'm a system engineer, you perhaps think of me like a science lover, but I'm passionate about design, fashion, handcrafts, and basically everything that involves some kind of creativity. In my spare time, I practice Zumba, and I'm learning kite surfing. And I'm an adventurous soul, and I love to travel, seeking for new adventures.
Kite surfing in particular, that's something that really jumps out to me, because I feel like that's something I've seen. I haven't actually tried it out myself. So I'd love to maybe pick your brain at a different time.
You should try. You should try.
No, definitely. I mean, I'm not as adventurous, I'd say, but yeah, definitely like to push myself out of my comfort zone at times. So that's great. I mean, yeah, maybe could you now that you've spoken about yourself on a more of a personal note, I was wondering if you could maybe talk about what your role is at NaranjaX.
Sure. Okay. I'm the data management manager as part of the Center of Expertise of Big Data and Advanced Analytics. I'm responsible for data governance and data quality programs, as well as for data compliance.
Thank you for that. And one question I'd love to ask you, and this is something we've been asking other industry leaders as well, is what is data governance in your perspective? Because I feel like one of the things we've sort of really seen is it's a very opinionated space. So data governance could mean different things to different organizations or leaders. So in your perspective, what would that be?
It's a good question. I have two definitions, actually. The formal definition for me is that data governance is the process that manage and improve data for the benefit of all stakeholders. But the simplest way that I found to explain it is by doing an analogy with human resources department. Talent is one of the most valuable assets in any organization. So we all agree on that, right? So we need to manage them efficiently. So that's why HR exists, because they define processes, procedures, policies to make the best of them. So same happens with data governance, but instead of talent, we manage data. That is another key asset of any organization nowadays.
Love that analogy, because yeah, I can clearly see the correlation between talent when it comes to HR and data, which is something that a lot of organizations, I feel, realize the value of, but they don't realize how sort of governance helps them get there. And how, even before they start building these other initiatives around ML or AI, how governance really plays such a critical role. So I was wondering, I mean, maybe if you take yourself back to the beginning of your career, I was wondering how you actually entered the arena of data governance. Like, what made you begin your journey?
Okay, I love this question because I think you are not going to expect the answer. So my first contact with data itself was in 2010 when I was doing my thesis. We developed some computational and statistical techniques, nowadays commonly known as AI, to estimate the effort in software development projects. Although it was an exciting journey, I realized and suffered in first person the extraordinary effort needed for understanding and preparing data. So although my whole professional career was focused on software engineering, after 10 years, as you mentioned in the introduction, in 2019, I was offered a position called data governance leader. So after I Googled it, what that meant, I automatically realized that a whole discipline, was created and developed not only to help analytics, but the entire companies. So that was a direct flashback to my thesis. And that's when I fell in love with data governance, actually. So I always say that I started from scratch because that is the truth. So it was something new. It was something racing. Nobody has experience, at least in Argentina here. And so I studied a lot. I participate in more than 60 webinars worldwide. Yes, I got them cataloged, I swear. I did some self-paced learning courses. I read the DM book, second edition, and I got my CDMP certification last year. But mostly important, when I was getting all this theoretical knowledge, I started doing the link between what the books and other experts say with what was my business's struggles, what were my business's challenges, and which was my company maturity state, and how data governance fit in there. That's basically how I started.
Love that story, actually, especially the fact that you self-taught yourself and became an expert in this space. So really love how sort of that was all on your own. I mean, fully initiative taken on your own end. So no, I really love that. I mean, one of the things I'd love to understand is that aspect that you mentioned around building data governance from scratch and bridging these theoretical maybe concepts or research-based concepts to real-world examples. So I was wondering, like, in your perspective, what were those difficulties in your own case when you were trying to start this from scratch?
Okay. First of all, I think that it's not the cool stuff, starting from the name. So it doesn't get the hype if you compare it with AI or advanced analytics. So that is the first thing. The second one is that being a new area in a company when nobody knows what it meant. And at the beginning, it was really difficult to get the support of the company in general. And what I realized is that people try to avoid what they don't understand. So we need to make sure that people understand the why first, why data governance, why should I be listening to you, and why that will solve any of my problems. I think that the challenge is that we need to express our data improvements in terms of business outcomes and empathize with our customers' daily data problems, that everyone has them, and start from there. And it's not the same to say like, okay, we have to clean some data, than saying, okay, we need to decrease the number of undeliverable marketing ads, for example. Or instead of saying we need to create a taxonomy, you should say, okay, we need to create a common vocabulary in the organization. The difference is huge. So that's another thing. The third thing for me, it's organizational culture. That data governance is mainly about people. People's behavior about data is what we need to be governed. So we need to shift old paradigms, like, for example, okay, IT is responsible for data, or big data teams are responsible for data quality. No, we are all responsible for data. Get over it. No, this is the only correct answer to that question. So we need, for changing all that paradigms, we need organizational change management. And for that, we need a good sponsorship of our data governance programs. The higher in the organization, the better. And change has always and constantly underestimated, and change is not a matter of ability, it's a matter of motivation. It's like avoid pain, gain pleasure. So another thing that I understood is that we need to invest the necessary effort to understand what motivates people. And lastly, I would like to mention that our data governance programs is based on data stewardship. And there we encounter a lot of resistance in people that they think they are not responsible for the data they use, they create, they transform, and they explode on the daily basis. So answers like, I don't have time, or that's not part of my job, or I can't prioritize other activities in my backlog are like common answers that we receive at the beginning when we start doing the onboardings to our steward candidates. So we need to formalize accountability instead of assigning people more work, because they already do that thing of task with data, It's only a matter of giving the accountability and formalize that responsibility. Doing that with the data catalog to really activate that formalization, for us, it has been a huge help.
No, that's a great point. I feel like, yeah, that I've heard the phrase, and I'm sure you have too, where everybody owns it at the same time, nobody owns it. So I feel like,
Exactly.
yeah, that kind of change management, that kind of formalizing the processes, and that really plays a big part. And I love your point about executive sponsorship, because that's another point we've heard as a common theme. Because unless you have that top down buy-in or that sponsor to push the initiative through, uh, I mean, all the efforts that you probably put in are very sort of limited in terms of the scope of impact.
Definitely, definitely.
And I mean, apart from people, Lucia, so I definitely hear you in terms of how people within the people, process, and technology plays a critical role. But if we also look at the technology stack, what are maybe some of the biggest challenges from more of a technology perspective?
Okay. The challenge is not to think that data governance is a technology issue, right? It's not a matter of technology. Actually, if you see in the market, there are several tools offering data catalogs, glossaries, several connectors to sources, crawling, profiling. Pick one, just pick one. There are several, and virtually they offer the same functionalities. For me, the real challenge is to create a data governance framework that adapts to your company state of the art. For me, that's the real challenge, you know, it's not a technological issue.
Got it. So yeah, as long as you can maybe focus more on that other critical aspect around people, the technology would be something that comes that wouldn't be as challenging, let's say. So I mean, definitely, I think it takes me back to your previous point that you were making about how once you can get people to buy in, aligning on which vendor to use becomes more of a straightforward, relatively straightforward decision.
Exactly, and it is with AI models. You know, you can have the best algorithm, but if you put bad data, the results are still bad results. Same happens with the tool. You can have the best tool in the market, but if you don't have a process in place, you will not have a data governance program. That is not going to happen. You know, it's not magic power.
Definitely, yeah. I think what is that phrase? The other phrase I've heard: garbage in, garbage out. So
exactly.
That's a good sort of summarization of it. And I mean, if you take a step back, Lucia, if we want to understand maybe what some of the business use cases are at NaranjaX and how they correlate to data governance, I was wondering if you could maybe give our listeners an idea of what that is.
Sure, sure. What we did was to attach our data governance framework with data pipelines into our data lake. So data ingestion is basically prioritized by business use cases. So for example, we need to create or develop a fraud prevention model. And for that model, we need transactional data, customer data, risk data, whatever data we need. So we make sure to gather the correct people, let's say data stewards, data consumers, and data engineers, and make sure that that data is curated, governed, and shared, not only for the benefit for that use case in particular, but for the whole company, because we are making that data available in our data catalog. So it's an iterative process. The challenge is to make that process faster and more collaborative.
Love it. And I think that aspect around formalizing what those processes are, I think that helps you in this from this aspect of democratizing the data, because you can make sure that people have access to data and maybe they own other aspects of it. So that's a great point. I mean, maybe sort of a related question that I had is maybe what are some of the drivers around data governance at NaranjaX? Like, why did you decide to undertake your journey when it comes to governance?
Okay, it's a good one, you know, because I understand and I know that sometimes compliance and regulations are the main drivers for data governance, but I do believe that data governance itself is an enabler of a data culture in a company. So if you really want to democratize access to data in your organization, it's absolutely necessary. It's not optional, you know. And if you want to become a data-driven company, you need to make sure that the correct people access to the correct data for the correct purpose. And that, for me, is the main driver for data governance.
One question I also love to pick your brain on is, what you see, like how do you see data governance evolving maybe in the future, or if you had a crystal ball, what would you say data governance looks like maybe 5 years from now, either within your organization or maybe more broadly speaking?
Okay, and that's a good one. Actually, I think that now start to change that focus, that organizations, they realize that it's not only enough having that data scientist in the organizations, right? So that start to change. And I think that data governance is going to have more attention and more importance in organizations. So that is the first thing. And the second one is that I do believe that you can automate a lot of things in data governance, but definitely we will still depend on that subject matter experts doing what they know how to do it, so the technology will evolve. We are going to be able to do better things with our crawling, profiling, statistic information, our data quality monitors. But I do believe that we will still need a human putting all their knowledge in that,
That's a great point. I mean, yeah, I think that human element, the people, again, going back to your point around how people need to be a critical part of any sort of data governance program that needs to be put together. That's sort of a great link back there. And I was wondering, when it comes to people and DataQG, let's say, how did you what did you hope to gain by leveraging a resource platform like DataQG?
Mainly, in my case, is to make connections with other data professionals around the world, and just to exchange experiences and learn from others' challenges,
No, that's a great point. And to be honest, yeah, that was one of the reasons why we started DataQG in the first place, so that leaders, practitioners across the globe could have one virtual sort of roof, if you want to think of it that way, to network with each other, exchange best practices. So again, glad we're talking today. And maybe for some of those other practitioners or those leaders who are trying to get a data governance program off of the ground, what advice would you like to give them?
The first thing I would suggest is to define roles and responsibilities. For me, that is the first milestone, okay? And that they should focus on the most critical data of the company. That mainly the most critical data, it's data of the relations of your brand, customers, consumers, suppliers, patients, merchants, etc. And again, try to stick data improvements into business outcomes, because that's the way you will show real value to business. So that are my quick suggestions, let's say.
Love it. I mean, yeah, we've been asking that question in our other interviews as well, and I think we've been getting great sort of perspectives based on the experiences that each leader has had. So I love your takeaways there. And I think that was sort of the last question that I had on my end. But I was wondering, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to add?
Well, I just have told you about Argentina, about Córdoba, about our data governance journey. For me, talent is the new 21st century commodity. And in Argentina, there are full of excellent professionals, and specifically in Córdoba, that it's a city of education per excellence, with many universities and educational institutions. So I would love to invite you all to make connections and work together to give data governance the place it deserves in organizations.
Absolutely. And maybe while sort of networking with you, also sort of checking out some of those great places that you mentioned at the beginning of the call. So yeah, definitely would love to sort of visit someday. So fingers crossed.
Sure, you are all more than welcome.
Excellent. And I was wondering, Lucia, before we wrap up today, what would be the best way for our listeners to maybe get in touch with you to learn more?
Yeah, you can contact me through LinkedIn. My profile is Lucia Arando, so you can direct a message to me there.
Excellent. And on that note, I'd like to thank you again, Lucia, for your time today. Really enjoyed our conversation today. And like I said, could easily sort of go off on a tangent on any of those other topics that we mentioned. But again, really appreciated our conversation today.
No, my pleasure. Thank you, Bharat.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.